I don't care. Here. I'll lay the mic over there. If y'all get real loud, it'll probably pick it up.
You have 100 views on your video that you did.
Okay. All right, everybody ready? Here we go.
Probably sitting to take off.
All right, everybody, welcome. This just now getting started. They've had to run in real quick. Running a new style here tonight as I get everything loaded up here. Trying to get all the where you guys can comment and stuff on the race. This is, I know the bodies are not matching up, but this is essentially how the new series is going to be ran. These guys are getting to run for free as they're all in the series, except for a couple of them that have to pay that are not in the series. But we will be accepting series invites all week long for those that are wanting to still get in the series and haven't made the plunge yet. Hey, let them know that the race needs to continue on. That's the way it goes.
Tom's got a low fire. He didn't even take off.
Okay. We'll let him get the wire fixed. Actually, let me just go out there and tell him. I'll be right back, y'all. All right, I just went out there to explain to guys how it was going. Of course, this is just a preliminary, so I think a bunch of the guys are going to go ahead and maybe allow some work tonight. I'm not for sure. But the way that it works, just like this example you see here, the car that freshly come off there got booted a little bit, but nonetheless, that's the only time that the track's going to come off is if the car wrecks somewhere where our track marshals are not staged. And it's all controlled by Clay. None of the drivers have any control over the track being shut off. So it might get pretty brutal down there at Dead Man's Corner sometimes. But it should be just in a timely fashion. People are going to try to get them put back on. As we got a car that seems to be shut down there on blue, having issues. Glenn Burden's car. That's in the back stretch. I tried to explain it the best I could. If anything happens in the back stretch, the button's supposed to get pressed. But anyways, It didn't happen. The whole point of it, ladies and gentlemen, is the button gets pressed when our track marshals have to exert more energy than they should have to. So in that aspect there, that stalled car on blue, the button should have been hit. It wasn't. We're learning this now before the series starts. But nonetheless, for the most part, the track's going to just be running wide open. You're looking at about the difference of how long the track's going to be on. So as you see there, that track was getting hit real quick. It looks like we have an issue here with one of the cars not running. I think he's going to go take a look at it or something. Do not know. Might have an issue with the motor. Sometimes these motors will mess up on one side or the other, and they need a little bit of a love tap to get going again. And that's what it looks like here. It looks like a bad motor possibly there for Glenn Burton. He took several licks last week. His stuff was pretty bent up last week. As we see Gerald Suttle's car go there to the outside, he's going to have time to be able to put his car back on, and then we're going to go green racing yet again. Well, and that's the way it works too. Clay said he doesn't like to be on the button, but he's on deck. So everybody that's on deck from here on out, as you can see, we're running ghosts here because we got eight guys. So that would be no track marshals. So we put ghosts in, so there's always 2 track marshals. As we see Gerald Suttle's car there involved in a pretty good incident yet again on the High Banks corner there. See Robert Bishop there helping getting these cars put back on. But a sense of urgency here, just simply just to keep the flow going. Because once the series starts, as we knew last time that we had the series, you guys know sometimes these races were running quite late in the day. So for our Thursday racers, that's something that can't really happen, is they got to work the next day. So we're trying to get whatever kind of time that we can possibly get for these racers, and this is one of the ways. So the race should approximately take no longer than 1 hour to run. And instead of punishing the guys when they come off, they're just going to have to wait. As we see another car there flying to the High Banks corner of the track there, it's getting put back on orange. That's looks to be Tom Payton's car. The aggression's still pretty strong here recently with the guys running GRCs coming out of Dead Man's Corner, causing these guys to somewhat wiggle around a little bit too aggressively in the crook of the track there, causing them to come out in the high banks. But like I said, that is one of the only reasons that the track button should be hit, as there's going to be several wrecks take place there in Dead Man's Corner that usually clogs up a lot of the racing for the night. Yet again, these guys are racing for free tonight. They're racing for something though, because we just can't let them not race for something. They're racing for a engine cooler. Or not an engine cooler, a motor cooler. An engine would be combustion, I suppose. But we see Bruce Bullington out in the lead right now with 60 laps average. Gerald Suttle with 53. Greg Kimball with 51. Tom Payton with 44. Glenn Burton with 41. We're also going to try some math tonight and see if this is something that's feasible and easy to do. And we might implement it into the way that we do averages for like I was telling you guys earlier today in the live stream, and see if this is going to work out and keep competition high here at Lanes Raceway. If it's something that's just going to take a extreme amount of time and it's not something we can push out real quick for the racers, because after some of these races, it's pretty late in the evening. If it's not something like that, we're just going to have to get through this season with a different method. We probably won't go back to the lap per point method, as that does get somewhat confusing towards the end of the race series, having to keep track of all those laps. But we're probably going to go to some more simplified just point method if this doesn't work out the way that we want. Now, if it does work out and it's not that big of a headache, and we can get it done within, let's say, 10 minutes after the race is over with while people are checking out to go home, we might actually move to this more of a handicap setting for this series to kind of help the newcomers that are getting in the series like Clay be able to actually be competitive with those that are veteran like Glenn, Tom Payton, and Randy Kirtley. So also Bruce Bullington for the circle track. So, you know, it just kind of helps everybody run their best and hardest out there during the series, and we'll see how things work out. But then again, these guys, they're just here to race, have a good time. I want to make sure that whenever everybody goes home, they're smiling, having a good time. That's my main objective anyway. Whenever I'm here commentating this race, I want the guys to go back home, be entertained, watch themselves race. We see Tom there taking him a little bit of a relax. He's actually the reason why I got that motor cooler, because I always see Tom blowing on his motor. I feel like he's going to hyperventilate out there some days when it gets a little hot in here. A couple of weeks ago, the guys actually opened the doors. They got so hot. So we got 24 seconds left to go. We'll just head back over here to the live cam and get ready for everybody to get up and go. We see now Robert Bishop on deck. You see him taking his seat there for the track call button. Randy Kirtley taking control of putting the cars back on in Dead Man's Corner. 7 seconds left to go. But a nice smooth transition into this series, as it's been pretty hectic here at Lanes Raceway the past couple weeks within drag racing and just running regular races and stuff like that. We've been quite busy, and we've done quite a few more orders than we usually do. So everything's been kind of hectic. It's been hectic on my brother, who is the other owner of Lanes Raceway, in his other jobs that he has. So we haven't really had a whole lot of time to focus in. That was the whole reason for us to get involved in this series and postpone it for a month, was try to get something going on. But nonetheless, we've been working on it hard for the past couple days. I know my brother's been writing script and stuff for the internet on the website, posting the rules, and you know, we're still a new track, trying to get everything to where everybody will be happy and pleased. But we're going to make mistakes here. Things are going to go awry, and that's part of the learning process. We learned a lot from our first series that we had. Sean Libbs said, should have come tonight. Been having a blast. Hey, Sean Libbs, as always, like I've been telling you, I appreciate your comments, man. You do bring a smile to my face. Sean Libbs, always very positive about slot car racing. We do enjoy him. He's been in a few of these races, and hope to see him come back and possibly get in the series also with these guys. As you know, we don't want to take it so serious that we take the fun out of it, but at the same time, I want it to be so competitive that everybody has to try. And I think that's when the best racing comes out. That's when people start learning a whole lot more how to run the racetrack, and the smoothness becomes, you know, second to none for sure, as these guys don't want to wreck each other, because it could mean the difference between them losing the race or winning it. If we can get it that tight, that's the way we want it. Thank you for that like. Appreciate it. We're heading back going green here. We see Greg Kimball had another fellow follower come across his line as he got a break out there. That's what that black surrounding his car is. So we see his car actually stalled out there on orange, having some issues. Must have really took a wallop there. We see Randy Kirtley messing with his car, going back over there where Greg's setting. He's going to take a quick look at it. During the race settings, though, our track marshals will need to remain at the track marshal setting in case cars come off. But nonetheless, we do appreciate Randy, as he's a skilled veteran when it comes to working on these cars, and he's always thinking about others over himself. So he got Greg back up and running. We didn't have a single issue that whole time. Another thing that I've noticed too is whenever there is no control over shutting the track off and people get a little bit scared about getting cars put back on and stuff like that, you don't have as many wrecks. This being an example here that we see quite a few people coming off there. That's just simply Robert. He's new to the game. He's still trying to learn how to get these cars on quick and efficient, but it's not a skill that requires hours and hours. It's something that you learn really, really quick here. at Lanes Raceway or any track for that matter. And actually, he got those last 2 cars on her in a really good fashion, pretty quick in retrospect to how long it takes to get them on usually. Some of these cars too, they don't have their guide flag set just perfect, and they kind of grip a little bit, and they'll lean to the left or the right. So it takes a little bit more of an effort to get those cars put back on efficiently. But nonetheless, Robert doing an excellent job there on the button. I don't know exactly what they're doing right now, working on somebody's car. We currently got 6 racers out there. Randy Curley was able to get them back on, and we're going green racing. So we're kind of defaulting a little bit on the way that we should be running, but we're also having fun here tonight as this is a free race. Glenn Burden there, his car having some more issues there. I think possibly the motor's just about shot on that baby. Like I said, he had a rough night the other night in the dual GRC. Glenn Burden took several licks. I seen his car. He had brand new wheels and tires ready for the truck series on that thing. And I looked at his car today when we were looking through some tires and stuff like that. And anyways, one of his wheels is completely bent in the back, and we ended up getting that straightened out. I think it's just a motor issue. These motors, over time, they do lay down. It's been a while, I believe, since Glenn's actually got him a new motor for the GRC. That would be my bet. Now, I'm not 100% sure. I'm just taking guesses here because a while ago he did give it a little bit of a love nudge and it took off. And it looks like to me, though, there it is back running. It could have just been as simple as they had the braids too flat and the recess is too deep on the track, so therefore it wasn't making connection and he wasn't going. Either way, you got to have power to make these things go, and that's power on both sides of the braid. As we get a red flag rotation there, second heat of 11, we can start taking a look here at TrackMate, and I'll kind of run over about how some of the math is going to work. So let's say this is the end, and let's say that on average a person can turn 500 laps, let's say, on the circle track. So we'll take that 500 laps, subtract the 120 from it, and then we'll multiply that by 0.9. That'll give us our handicap, which then we'll add to our total laps. And then once you do that, that's simply the math of how these things work. So if you are really, really good and you end up going over the average of what the track is, you'll end up receiving somewhat of a punishment where others will, be able to gain up on you. Like I said, it'll be within 10% margin, so the races should be really, really tight. Like I said, at the end of this, I'm going to just do a quick trial run here, just doing it off my phone's calculator, and we'll see how all this works as if these were the people's normal averages. And then, of course, those averages change the more they race. 1 minute and 40 seconds left to go. Take us a quick look out here at the parking lot tonight. It looks darker than it usually does here at Lanes Race, or it does for me anyway. And it could be because of this blistering red sports car looking car out here at Lanes Raceway being so bright. But I think that's a car of Gerald Suttles. But anyways, he's been running really well here the past few weeks at Lanes Raceway. His car's been really fast and hard to keep up with for sure. Let's head back over to the oval cam just to take a look. There's Gerald Suttle right there with his overalls on, with the orange shirt there. Clay Dame next to him to his left. Bruce Bullington there in the tan shirt. Robert Bishop at the end of the track on red with his blue hat. Greg Kimball, he comes here every couple of weeks or so as he does a lot of over-the-road traveling, doing deliveries and stuff like that. He'd love to be here more often than he is able, but it's good to have him here tonight too, as he is definitely a ray of sunshine every time he comes in here. And I find it funny too how aggressive sometimes he speaks to people, and he's like, "Yep, I'm gonna wreck you." It always just cracks me up. But we got a smorgasbord of guys here that just keep me in stitches most of the time. Ed Howe says hi. Hello, Ed. How you doing, man? I wish you was here. I'm sure you're probably working too right now. We got Tom Payton there now. Randy Kirtley on the button. As they're going to track marshal this heat. But already so far, I'm seeing a really smooth amount of racing here going on. A little bit more of a calm down mode here as we see, Gerald Suttle there running in 1.852. On this lane, I've seen Gerald run in the 1.7s. So I think the guys are just trying to keep it smooth, keep it on, as they know the punishments are a little bit worse now with the live track. They don't want to come off and lose 3 or 4 laps versus before when we had the buttons going. Those guys were able to hit and then, hit the button real quick. We see Greg Kimball there taking a look at his car. Randy Kirtley completely leaving his post there for track button. Hopefully we don't have any incidents where the track needs to come off. Randy Kirtley, though, just recently joined us and subscribed to us there on Twitch, so we appreciate that. Everybody here that's watching these live streams, if you would, give us a like, subscribe, and share for Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube, which we end up uploading to. It does take a little bit longer to upload to YouTube at the end of the night, and I have to stay in a couple hours later than I usually do just to get the stuff uploaded. But the guys really like it. Most of the guys actually go through on YouTube and watch it as it ends up processing a little bit better and compiling a little bit better, especially with no drop frames because it's directly recording to the computer. But we haven't really had a whole lot of drop frames since we've stopped trying to stream all 3 simultaneously. So the drop frames currently right now, we've been running for 22 minutes right at it. We got 0 drop frames in both Twitch and in Facebook Live. So it's been a blessing for sure, especially the past couple weeks. Computer itself not overheating and getting excessively hot, running around anywhere from high 40s to 60%. So really, really well. Pleased with that too. We get all these racers going. Give me a moment and let me show you guys what these guys are racing for tonight, because I'm kind of excited just to give it away. Now, it doesn't seem like much, but, it's really well built for what it is. You got the Mid-America Boss Dog there, and a little magnet there on the end, but it's a heat sink. It's an aluminum heat sink. And what you do, let's see if I can get a motor real quick. I'll show you. Speaking of these motors, I got to remind Gerald tonight that we're going to need his motor from last week, and he gets to draw from either one of these motors here, get him a fresh motor, because he won both races last week. But nonetheless, this little heat sink just goes on the motor like that during your heat, and it cools it off, so you don't have to blow on it and stuff. Now, I mean, it's up in the air whether or not it works really well. I don't know. It's kind of new stuff. They didn't have this stuff back when I raced slot cars. And I'm sure Ed and Sean both know that, it's kind of new stuff. I also got some comm coolers, and they're soldered on. You solder them on to the end of the commutator, which if we're looking at this motor here, this end here is your gear end, and this here end here where the prongs are, those are the brush, where the brush springs that hold the brush to the commutator, and that's what you solder your wires to. But that's the commutator side, and you just put that heat sink on the end of it, and we got some of those too. And I thought, well, hey, if it does cool it off, that'll keep people from having to. Yeah, it is magnetic, Sean. There's the magnet right there. Yeah, and I even thought too. Coalford sells the heat transfer stuff. Maybe put some of that heat grease on there, kind of like a CPU on a computer, and maybe that would actually pull the heat off a lot quicker, especially if you come on one side of the motor. But nonetheless, I mean, I think these things are like $5 or so. They're not like too outrageous. And like I said, they're pretty cool. I wish they had them in different colors. If they had them like in some blues and chrome and stuff like that to match the guys' cars, I think that'd be really cool. Maybe give the guys a call at Mid-America and let them know that. But I'll show you what the commentator one looks like, and it's really, really small, but it's pretty cool too. So the commentator one is from Trinity brand, right here, Trinity. We'll see if we can get a good look here, if it'll focus. But you can kind of see there. I don't know if I can get that to focus or not. Anyways, you can see the hole there, and that just essentially just goes around the end of the commentator bell like that, you know, and I guess it's those little fans there help cool it off. Well, Sean, appreciate that like. You bring that drag car in here, we'll take a look at it, and you know, we can definitely work some deals out. We're always working deals out here at Lanes Raceway for sure. You know, some guys are highly after certain things drag racing wise, and a built Lanes Raceway car, if you already got the car for one, you know, we charge $20 to blueprint them, so we're the cheapest around for sure. Now, sometimes it takes me a little bit of time to work on them, especially, see, Clay's been waiting for a couple weeks for me to work on his, but I didn't have the piano wire, and we get that from Chicagoland from our distributor. So, you know, sometimes it takes a little bit of time, and then plus I spend a lot of time. You can ask these guys. I worked on Ed Howe's, which his is done now. I worked on Glenn Burden's and Paul Woosley's the past week, and I probably got 8 or 9 hours in those cars. So definitely just to get them freed up, get them running smooth and stuff, it does take some time. I'm here all day. A lot of times I got a lot of free time because it really doesn't really get really busy until later on at the nighttime. But like I said, I do take pride in building those cars, and I love whenever I see a car that we built out there running for first place. Bruce has yet to let me touch one of his cars. I wish he would let me touch one of his cars because, you know, I'd like to just see some of the stuff Bruce does on his. But we're all kind of just in this together. Bruce knows some secrets, and every once in a while I'm able to squeeze a little bit of water out of that nickel. As we see, Sean Libb says, I've got 25. Man, that is a lot of drag cars. We had a few guys here a couple of weeks ago, man. They brought full garages up in here, and they entered like 40 or 50 cars. It was incredible. Very stressful for me on this side, running the software and everything. One good thing about the software is, though, when you get the guys' cars in that they run, as long as they use the same names, their ETs are saved, and for the most part, you can run several drag races back to back as long as you got those ETs in there. But when people bring new cars, we put them in there, and that's pretty much the data entry that you got to do each race. But we're getting quicker and quicker as we're getting closer and closer to being able to get everybody's cars in the system. Look here at the track mate, Bruce Bullington out there in the lead with 239 laps. Gerald Settle right there behind him, though, with 235. Like I said, Gerald's car has been really quick the past couple times. Got him a good motor, evidently. Glenn Burden there, 171. He's there in third place, holding it down with one of the cars built here at Lanes Raceway. His car took some big hits during the duel, like I said. Clay Dame, newcomer. He got him a new gear ratio tonight he was trying out, so there he is in fourth place. Just to be starting out, what a great result so far for Clay. Greg Kimball there, he's got another one of the cars built here at Lanes Raceway. I don't know if he's running it tonight or not, but anyways, he's got 114 laps. Robert Bishop there at the 103. Robert Bishop, also newcomer, known for being in RC racing, and he got interested in the place by playing pinball. Tom Payton, also veteran here, got him a mailbox in the back, him and Randy Kirtley and Glenn Burden. I think they all got cots in the back. They're all working together. We see him there with 47 as his lap average. A minute and 43 seconds left to go. We'll head over to the oval cam, see if you guys can see some secrets. I'm going to go ahead and put this Trinity calm cooler back up and put this motor back in there. I might even go out there and tell Gerald if he wants, he can select from the can tonight. But I'm going to need that motor. That's just how it is here at Lanes Raceway. You win 2 in a row, you get it's kind of like a badge of honor, really. I guess I could show you guys the old badge of honor. Not too many people's added to it. Here it is, though. The old badge of honor right here. If it says, if you roll 2, draw and drop. But, you know, the guy's winning. I don't want it to feel like it's, you know, I know the guys for the most part, they're not really cheating these motors up. I mean, if you can cheat these motors up, you're pretty skilled for one. But I don't think the skill level's there for the majority of us. But so that's why I say, you know, if they want, they can get a fresh motor instead of having to draw out of here. But if they want one of these motors and they think there's something special about them, I've already looked through them. They've not really been messed with. So, you know, it's here. But nonetheless, you know, I would make sure everybody was in the vicinity when I drop my motor in there, just to let them know, you know, kind of as a flex on them, like, yeah, I won 2 in a row. What are you going to do about it? But that's just kind of rubbing it in. I think it's kind of funny. But yeah, we got 5 of them so far that's had back-to-back wins. Gerald will make the 6th. So we'll see if Gerald will put his motor in here tonight. He'll either draw one out of here if he wants. I think Guillermo and Randy Kirtley and I think maybe Glenn Burden have dropped in here. And Gerald Suttle, he'll be the next one in that line of greats, I guess you could say. So we see Tom Payton there. He's actually getting those cars on in a really good fashion. He's messing with somebody's car. Something's going on there. Well, I think he said something about a gear loose. He's going to try to get him worked on, and we'll see how that works out. I'm going to go ahead and put this back up. Guys, getting ready for Saturday. We're going to have the wing car race out here. If you guys got a box wing car, you guys should check it out. It's going to be a great time. Got guys coming from Tennessee and close friends to ours. Actually made friends here, really. Milton Gamble, Wally from, you guys may know him, come from White House, Tennessee, when they had a track, Go Fast Products. Some of you guys might know that. He come down here. He was actually the winner last time. Sag, you guys might know Sag. He come down, and then Jeff Strain. Those guys, they come down. So tomorrow, or Saturday, gonna have those guys here, and I'm gonna buy us all pizza, and we're gonna have us like a little pizza party while we race wing cars. And then after that, we're gonna do GTP, which all those guys have got themselves a GTP ready. I think Milton said he has him a Mazzetti ready, so I'm really excited to see. This will be the first Mazzetti I've seen actually in a race. Now, I've built 2 of them here at Lanes Raceway, the Wishbone car and the Frankenstein car. But neither one of them has really been in a hard-driven race yet. They've just been racing with the guys here at Lanes Raceway. So it's going to be interesting to see how well that Mazzetti chassis pans out. Now, I will say this, as we head over to TrackMate, you can see that Bruce is still out there in the lead, but Gerald's really reeling it in with 292. He's only 2 laps different. Clay Dame, he's in 3rd place right now, ladies and gentlemen, and he's pretty new to this. I think this is his 3rd, maybe his 4th race. He's a little bit out in front of Glenn Burden there. Glenn Burden having some trouble there on black lane, it looks like, and purple lane. Usually those are strong lanes for Glenn. Maybe need to take a little bit of look at his car. As we did take a look at Greg Kimball's car today, and we ended up placing some weight to make it work with him a little bit more. And it might possibly be he's just a hair heavy. So who knows with these gear ratios. But like I said, we just recently got a new car in. Well, actually, a couple new cars from Mid America. They're making some pretty crazy 4-inch stuff. Now, I'm not going to say it's like the highest quality stuff. It's definitely not built like JK stuff out of the box and stuff. But nonetheless, for the price difference, they're very comparable. So Mazzetti, in my opinion, this is just me right now, they're just a little bit ahead of JK. JK stuff is still flexi stamped chassis, like, you know, they put them in a jig, and I guess they stamp these things out, cut them by stamps, you know. But the Mazzetti stuff is like laser cut stuff. So it's just a little bit higher of a quality, I suppose, than JK. But then you look at Mid America's stuff that they're coming out with now with the Gemini chassis and what is that other one called? I just got one in. Give me 1 second. I'll get both of them. All right, we got 33 seconds. I just got the whole lot just to kind of do some comparisons here with you guys and see what you guys think. Okay, so it was a Mercury chassis. Now, these have been out for a bit, but you can kind of see the resemblance between them and the Mazzetti chassis, how there's just not much there. Now, this one has some pretty honky side pans for a Mazzetti. But the newest chassis that I've seen that they've come out with is this Gemini chassis. And it's very, very close to what I consider the king of the track right now, which is the Alios chassis from JK. As you can see, they're very, very close. Then we got Cheetah chassis. This is what I ran back in the day, is the X25 from JK. A really good chassis. If you don't want to mess with the JK11 3-pan setup, it's a pretty good alternative. Now we do got a racer here, and what I love about this Salvador chassis, you can see here it's not put together, but we have it here at Lanes Raceway. What's good about it is when you look at some of the bottom of these chassis and stuff, I don't think I have one here per se. There's bolt-in chassis, and then there's chassis like this that you solder in. Well, when you solder in a chassis, your motor comes flat to the bottom of the chassis. This lowers your center of gravity. Bolt-in chassis tend to have your motor the width of the chassis above the chassis. So it kind of sets on the chassis. Well, the cool thing about this Salvador is it's a bolt-in chassis. You can see right there that it's a bolt-in chassis. Well, let me get my finger just right. Maybe. There it is, right there. So you can see right there that that's the bolt-in spot through the plastic there. And you can bolt this motor in, but the cool thing about it is the way they built this, when you bolt it in, the bottom of the motor is flush with the bottom of the chassis. So for quick motor changes, this thing's pretty intense. And I know when we first opened, this had beat a Mazzetti chassis in a race. Randy Kirtley had let me know about it off a slot bog. So these are pretty good. We do have a racer here, Paul Woosley, that runs one. The key to them is getting the slop set just right with those little weighted rear ends in the back. Let me see if I have a chassis here built out. So it's kind of like this right here. You can see this little pin here. Well, on the Salvador, there's little weights that are stoppers basically right there on the inside. And you want to get it to where there's just enough slop that you can go through those S-turns pretty quick. And like I said, once you get the Salvador chassis set up and doing right, it's also it's got iron in it because it's magnetic, which I'm not a fan of, because then you have issues with the motor. But you know, it can't be perfect, especially for the price of these chassis. But this chassis here can run with these solder-in chassis. I've seen it done. I've seen Paul actually win with one. So it's just interesting just how much that we're doing here as a smorgasbord of chassis. and all these guys getting together, and we're actually battling out pretty close to each other for it to be a class so broadened by the chassis selection. But everybody's running this pretty much the same gear ratios and stuff like that, so it boils down to weight a lot of the times. But then the lighter you are, the more it wants to pop you out of the front, kind of similar to wing cars, you know. So there's a happy medium that you got to get to, and sometimes I find out that the guys just can't get that trigger control just consistent enough, or they end up pushing it a little bit too hard, especially in the donut of the track. Because we don't run these on the circle track. It would just be too much of a chaotic mess. About the closest thing we'll run is those turbo flexi chassis, which would be very similar to like how JK stuff is. It'd be more similar to this like X25 chassis, but the side pans are drilled out, of course. But like I said, we don't run those on the circle track. It's kind of boring because they handle so well. You know, you want to run them where there's a little bit of competition, where guys are neck and neck and beating and banging. And for sure, there is plenty of that to go around in the GTP class. If you check that one race out, I'm still just mind blown about it by how close it was between Tom Payton, Guillermo Sauer, and Randy Kirtley a couple weeks ago when we ran on that. And those guys really drove their hearts out for sure. And a lot of times that's what it boils down to. 33 laps is average for the most part of what these guys are running. With the GTP on the orange track, 33 laps. And when they run more than that, like if they run a 34, like Tom Payton ran a 35 before he blew his motor a couple weeks ago. And seeing that take place after watching many GTP races and not seeing, I didn't think it was possible. I was like, I don't think you can run a 35 lap, and he ran it. So now I'm saying I don't think you can run a 36 lap, but we'll see what these guys come up with. Is they're always freeing up their cars and trying new things to get them lighter but still handle decently without having to put nose weight in it. But I know I've just been on a big tear here tonight talking about different classes and cars, but that doesn't take away for excited as I'm getting about the upcoming truck series that's going to take place here. Now, there's going to be a race for those that want to enter a series for the orange track and a race for those that want to enter the circle track. If you want to do both, that's fine too. There's a discount there, whereas a previous season it was $15 a race. If you get in both, you know, it's not going to cost you $30, it'll only cost you $25. If you get in a single race, it does cost just a little bit more. That we want to try to get as many racers as we possibly can. Not necessarily saying, as Randy Kirtley gave a little bit of a steel bullhorn there to Clay as they all ran up there in the high banks corner of the track there by Greg Kimball. But back to the subject of the truck series, which this is a layout of what's to come. But we see some of the guys running their truck bodies, some of the guys running their car bodies. But you're kind of seeing, relatively speaking, about how fast these cars are going to go. It's going to be pretty easy to commentate. I'm hoping that Drew Park comes and helps commentate with us here. He missed out last Sunday. We had a pretty good time in the duel. It did get a little bit hectic here on the circle track. Guys are running great tonight on the circle track, so we're happy to see that too. But this upcoming series, I think it's going to be an adjustment for the guys that were running the NASCAR series and the faster GTP cars. As we had originally stated that we wanted to have GTP 4-inch cars, the faster cars, what you've seen with these chassis before, run on the orange track and have the GRCs on the oval. We had some issues with guys not wanting to step forward and make that purchase for a 4-inch right then. So we're going to end up having that as our next series, and we might just do a back-to-back run on the orange for next series, and we'll come up with some gimmicky type things throughout the season just to keep the hype alive. We got some pretty wild stuff planned for this upcoming series just to keep people on their toes. So I'm excited. It's going to be a little bit different. We're pushing the limits a little bit further with this series coming up versus the one previously is just like a basic type series. This series here, from week to week, you know, you're going to have your regular race, but you never know. I might throw a monkey wrench in there about mid-season through. But either way you look at it, it's going to be interesting. I think these guys are really going to enjoy it. The trucks handle really, really well, especially on these tracks. I almost think they handle a little bit better than the cars at sometimes. As we've seen a rider there on white, that baby got hummed on down through there into the dead man's corner. But like I said, super excited for the truck series coming up. I love commentating the different series that we have here at Lanes Raceway, and I hope you guys really enjoy it too. Always, if you want, chime in. If you think there's things that could be done better, I'm always open ears. If we can make it happen, we'll make it happen. I'm always just, I know that the old adage, you can't please everybody, but for some reason or another, I can't stop trying. So I'm going to try my best, if I can, to help and please everybody if it is feasible. But things have loosened up a little bit as the learning curve, just how to run things here at Lanes Raceway, has laxed up a little bit for us, like me and my wife especially. So that opens up, you know, more freedom for us to get other things organized and situated. We see Gerald Suttle now in the lead with 406 laps. Clay Dame there with 311. Bruce Bullington with 294. Randy Kirtley with 241. Robert Bishop with 46.6. Tom Payton with 49.2. Glenn Burden with 28.5, and Greg Kimball with 42.5, respectfully. Each one of these guys averages doing quite well. As we see, these numbers are going to be more important towards the end of the race to see if this math is going to work out for these guys and see if there's going to be a change in maybe possibly leadership. If not a big deal. But if it is, then, it might be a surprise that somebody that's out in the front could be a surprise to the guy on the bottom. But at the very least, maybe clinch up and tighten up the difference between these guys. We'll see. 1 minute and 36 seconds here left to go. We head over to the oval cam and we see several of these guys out there right now working on their cars. See, Paul Woodsley made a trip in here with that neon green hat of his. He kind of slipped in here. I'm just now noticing him in here. Him and Christy Bobby. Christy Bobby, she's been coming in here and playing quite a bit of pinball on Friday nights. And Robert Bishop, he come in here today. He said, I'm just making sure we're going to be playing some pinball this week. So you can kind of see the updated scores tonight. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Tom earlier said that he's coming for me on Rush, I believe is what he said. So I'm just looking here to see if I see him. Not really seeing him here right now, but he says he's coming for me, so I'm going to hold my breath, I suppose, and see if that's going to be the case. Rock and Rod's still holding it down. He's been holding it down for a couple months now in Mandalorian and Rush. Nikki Hazlip just freshly got the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and she made it a full week up on top, so she's got $10 pinball money waiting on her. And I'm still holding it down in Godzilla, so we'll see how things change as the week progresses, and tomorrow being the pinball tournament. We do have a fun time doing that pinball, though. If you've never tried it, if you don't take it too serious, it's a great time. Like I said, slap the pinball machines, shun them, do whatever you got to do to keep that ball from draining. But just know there is a plumb bob in there, and it will tilt you out if you get too aggressive. But it's always worth a shot, especially if you're on your last ball, to try to keep that baby in play and see if you can come out on top. But none of us are pro players. Some of us can shoot the lanes a little bit better, but others having a little bit of difficulty. So we see a full-fledged hit there from Clay Dame. Maybe a lesson to be learned there is if somebody stalled there in the crook of the track, you could possibly let off a little bit there so that you don't hit them wide open. You live, you learn. That's about the best I can say. Hopefully that didn't injure either one of those cars too bad. But yeah, one thing I've noticed here recently, especially amongst some of the racers just now coming here racing on the circle track in the past couple weeks, issues with the braids being way too flat. These things are looking like they're ready to go on the drag strip. So, you know, about a 1/16 of an inch coming down off the guide flag is about perfect. That way you keep your center of gravity low there on the front of the guide flag. But other than that, if you go a little bit higher than that to about 1/8 of an inch, that's about your playground there. Anything beyond that, you're too high. Anything below that, you're too low. And like I said, some of these guys are experiencing that as they get stalled out cars here with no connection on those braids. Then we've also had issues with guys. I always, too, recommend that every time that a race is raced, or at least, you know, I guess you could slide it maybe 3 races. But after about 3 races, you really need to cut those wires, those guide wires where the guide flag is, and you need, well, to replace it. Or you need to, you know, move it out a little bit and strip out some new wire. Because right there where that guide flag's moving back and forth, it's just constant wear on that. And you know how metal is. Like you remember as a kid, you take aluminum cans and you'd move them back and forth, and eventually you could rip them. Well, it's the same principle. It just takes a little bit longer with copper than it does aluminum. Sean Libb says, I'll keep that in mind. Yeah, it's the recess in this track, it's very minute, but the recess of it is what's causing these people's braids not to touch. Because, well, they're actually sitting on that recess a little bit with the guide flag, and they're just not making good connection. One way to kind of negate that, I guess I could show you a little something that you can do if you want to run your braids really tight in the front. All right, so I got me a little bitty friendly car here. I'm going to get these braids super flat and show you. For those that don't know how to get braid that flat, let's take a look from the side here. But you can see how flat those are up against the guide flag. For those that want to know how to do that, it's pretty simple. You just take and put pressure on the guide flag and press on to the braid itself. Push up a little bit and then pull down while letting your thumb slide a little bit. That's how you get them that flat. But once you get them that flat, that's too flat. Okay, that's drag strip ready. Like I said, I'll show you about where I like to keep my braid for both of these tracks. That braid there is trying to catch. Okay, so now we can take a look. So you can see there's about a 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch of gap there. That's about where I like to keep mine. But if you like to keep them flat like that, like we just showed, you want to definitely make sure at the bottom of the braid here that doesn't feel like a hump when you run your finger across it, okay? This is very important if you're going to do what I'm fixing to show you. It's got to almost feel like horsehair, okay? When you run your finger across it, there's no difference in texture. But then once you get that done and you get it super flat like you want it, then you just take like a tool like this and you stick it up against the side of the guide flag. You need to probably hold it if your guide flag is good and loose like it's supposed to be. Stick it up there and just run it down and put pressure on it while you're doing it. And when you do that, you'll see that the bottom of it flares out about the proper 1/8 to 1/16 of an inch, and the front stays really flat and true. So this keeps your nose down so that you can keep those front wheels lower center of gravity and they're barely touching. But then when you lay that car down on the track, you can see that the track first hits right here, pushing that braid up like that. So you always got connection there. And then you don't have to worry about the front making connection. Another good thing to do before you do all this is to take, you can do it a couple ways. You can take sandpaper, cut you a little piece out, and put it on your block and tape it down and run your guide flag back and forth till you get it nice and true and flat. Or you can actually get the tool that's for that, which we got one here. Looks like this. And you just stick the guide flag on it and you true it up. And when everything's all sanded down perfect, you got a good flat surface to put that on. Some guys use like Cofer tape too, and they replace that after every heat. And that keeps it kind of good too. So Sean Libbs, you know, giving me some info here. He says actually in drag racing, he just makes sure that the braid is just at the bottom of the flag. Uh, and like I said, I'm new to drag racing, so my info come from a guy that races down in Florida. I cannot remember his name right offhand.
Ralph.
Ralph, that's it. Ralph come in here and he helped me build out my car, and I built it by his spec. And I mean, man, it was so tight there on the wheelie bars. Like it felt like it was on the ground. And he's like, no, I can go a little more. And I was like, man, it feels like it's on the ground. But he messed with it a little bit, and he actually got it to go a little bit more, and it ended up working out good. That's our rental car here for those that want to get into drag race at Range Raceway, and it's pretty consistent. But yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of little things. Everybody does things different, and you know, like I said, Sean here, he's been doing that in drag racing. That's him, he says. But hey, why not give it a shot? If it helps your car stay on the track better, if it helps it to run more consistently, especially in drag racing, you know, give it a shot. Everything is open for you to give a shot for sure, especially in drag racing, as it's ET based. Yeah, Sean's right. We all do it differently, and I've done stuff, learned stuff from, you know, Randy Curtley, and did things a little bit different. Some things worked out, and some things don't. But eventually you come into your own, and you kind of just find out what's right for you, and it works good for your racing style. But I can give my car to somebody that I just want to race with. They'll take that car and they'll right out of the gate wreck it because it's just not built the way that they run their trigger. And this is very much evident, especially like you see here in the oval racing that we're watching now. Some people are really aggressive on the trigger coming out of the corner. Some people are late breakers. Some people are early breakers. And all this stuff matters, especially where you place weight. Because if you're an early breaker, well, you're going to have so much coast going in, but you're going to be more aggressive getting into the trigger, you know, at the beginning of the dead man's corner or something like that to carry your car back around. Whereas late breakers, you know, they're going to rely on that coast strictly in dead man's corner, and they could possibly be a little more aggressive coming out of that corner. If they're aggressive, the back end's going to sway, so you're going to need some weight there in the back end to keep that sway from happening. You know, and also the guys at late break, you know, they're going to need some help not popping out coming out of the corner, because they're going to be carrying a lot more speed because they late break and use that coast to their advantage. So they're going to need their weight up front to keep the nose down. So like I said, that's what makes racing so beautiful. Different combinations of gear ratios, different combinations of how people use their controllers, and even for that aspect, different digital controllers make a difference too. As you know, I run a Ruddick, and it's a daylight and dark different feel. I'll tell you a person you could probably ask, Jason Howard. He can tell you straight up there's a difference between a Ruddick and a DeFalco. Now, granted, the majority of people love DeFalcos. That's the Nike brand of controller when it comes to racing slot cars. But Ruddick is like a Reebok, you know. It's still a really, really good brand, but it's out of service now. I don't know, Reebok might still be in service though. We take a look here at the TrackMate. We see Clay Dame now, fourth race he's ever raced, finishing up there with 413 laps total, ahead of Gerald Suttle there with 406. Now his average is 51.6 laps, second to the last, but he was actually able to touch first place at least once, and that's something, especially him just starting out. His numbers are actually pretty respectable too for just starting out, as he is in the upper 50 range. Randy Curtley there, also in the upper 50 range, but he's broke over to the 60s for on average, 61.7. He's poised to take the win for this one, it looks. But on average, we see relatively in the 40s or 50s range, and all these guys are pretty close together for sure. Minute and 45 seconds. We're going to take a look here at the oval cam and watch these guys get up and get prepped and ready. But I will say, it's been a blessing that so far, even with drag racing, that I've not really been too daunted by some of the problems that take place. Because even though drag racing and circle track racing are two different birds, they're still birds nonetheless. And all cars, for the most part, can be fixed relatively the same way. Straighten them up, flatten them up, free them up, you know. And if you can do that, the consistency's a lot better, the speed's a lot better, and that's just something I've noticed. So, but there is a lot of intricacies. There's a lot of things that help that process that you really you don't learn until you start racing. So it's very interesting just to see how you develop starting out, and then how you just mature over time. Some of these guys starting out with regular Coulford controllers or regular Parma controllers, and you know they try a controller that you can change sensitivity and brake and stuff like that, and then the next thing you know, these guys are turning a tenth of a second faster than they was before with their controllers. But then you take another guy, and he can take that old Coulford, old Parma controller, and it's funny because he can take that controller and he can run right there with them. Thank you for that like. Appreciate it. Thank you for that like. Appreciate it. Yeah, Sean Liv says, yeah, we do it differently. Bird for sure. I'm in the dark with the circle track stuff, but not giving up. Yeah, Sean, you never should give up, man. It is a whole nother side of things. But at the same time, it's very, very rewarding, especially whenever you take a hundredth of a second off your lap time consistently, and then that develops into a tenth of a second, and the next thing you know, you're running right there with everybody else, and just that kind of development is what we really want to push, especially here at Lanes Raceway. 1 second here. Gonna try to load up the oval. This happens pretty much every time we run the race. We get a timeout. Not a big deal. Something we can fix really quick. All right, we're back in business. But yeah, for sure, Sean. I mean, you just now getting started in it. I mean, you look at how Robert Bishop and Clay's doing. They're doing really well, just starting out, for sure. They've come in here, they've asked me questions, they've asked guys out there questions, very outgoing guys for sure, and they're learning. They know about the gear ratios. Robert Whitaker last week, he left us with gear ratio charts, so we printed them out, and they're actually here in the shop. So if you come in the shop where I'm at right now, and you look towards the little mini window, which is right there where the American flag is on the oval camera, just to the right of that in the shop is where those gear ratio charts are, and these guys are changing those up. I will tell you this much, for the majority of the guys, now they're always trying something new. There's some guys out there trying something new tonight, but for the majority, guys are really stuck in pretty hard with the 1026. Now I'm not going to say that's going to get you to victory lane, but it's definitely somewhere to start for sure, especially if you're getting walked by a few of these guys. But I will tell you this, it will wear the motor more. These motors are not really meant to whine out that hard and pull that kind of top end. So those are issues that take place as you run those. The motors, they just don't last as long. So used to back in the day, we wouldn't listen to the packaging, say don't break in the motor, we'd break them in. But for this aspect, I will say, don't break your motors in. I've actually watched guys, Ed Howe, guy that said hi earlier, he put a brand spanking new Eagle motor in his NASCAR, and that thing was blistering in the last portion of the series. So these motors, these FK style motors and stuff, the brushes in them, they're not really high quality, kind of soft. Just run them. Just run them out of the gate, and I've noticed that they actually run a little bit better. Now, can you break them in and make them turn higher RPMs? You can, but it just lasts such a short time. You're better off just running them the way they come. Now, I've always kind of been curious, like something that you could do with the motor, which you're not allowed to take the motors apart in this class or nothing, but something maybe to think about if you're trying to get a little bit more out of that motor, is on the back side of that motor where the springs come through. It's like a plastic thing. Yes, a Hawk 7 and an Eagle are essentially the same thing. JK makes the Hawk 7, and an Eagle, of course, is from Mid-America, but they're the same RPM running motors. But something maybe to try on like the stomp motor, what they're running tonight, something maybe you could try. Now, I've not tried it myself, but I do know that those springs in there are just like copper sheet metal, basically, that hold down the brushes. Maybe you could take a needle nose plier or something like that and twist it to put more pressure on those brushes, essentially giving you a little bit better connection with the commutator. Don't hold me to it. Like, this would just be something that would just be strictly a chance. But if you do it, let me know, because I want to see how it runs, especially if you've ran it before without doing it, and we'll see if there's a comparison there. Yeah, Hawk 7, I do like a Hawk 7. Gabriel actually, if you know Gabriel, that's my brother. He actually come in here on the back side of the card for the Hawk 7. It gave a gear ratio, like the maximum gear ratio, and he ran that, and that thing, it ran great with that ratio. So something maybe to think about on that. Now, that was on the orange track, mind you. But the Hawk 7, it's ran in several of these JK cars that we have down here. That's what they essentially come with. But when you look at it from a standpoint of which one's better, it's just a difference of gear ratio, kind of like the similarities between a Falcon too. So the Falcon motors, if you gear them a tooth down, you can actually run them with those Eagle motors. But once you get the gear ratios down on the Eagles, they will tend to walk that Falcon. But a Falcon, man, when it comes to just sheer feel of how a car feels, nothing really beats that Falcon motor, in my opinion. That Falcon motor feels great in the hands. Like, you take like an FK 4002 motor, it feels like you got to pull the trigger a quarter of an inch before you get anything out of it. It's just really aggressive. I'm not a fan of that. But they say that motor is relative between a Hawk 7 and an Eagle motor. But then you take that Eagle motor and you put it in there with like a 201 DeFalco or a Ruddick, and you get so much more feel with the Eagle motor. Well, essentially the same thing's the case from an Eagle motor to a Falcon motor. You get so much more feel with a Falcon motor than you do an Eagle motor even. But if I was to choose between the two, which one I like more over an Eagle or a Hawk, hands down, I like the Eagle. I love it. The Eagle motor, it just feels like it has a better mid trigger feel, and especially on the orange track, that's where your sweet spot is about mid trigger. Coming around, you're starting early trigger, and then you get into the mid trigger coming around the donut, but then you stay in the mid trigger all the way to the back stretch until you're full throttle. And the Eagle is just a perfect motor for that orange track. Now, for the circle track, like if they run on the Eagle or Hawk 7 and an Eagle with the Indy cars, Tom Payton, he'll swear by a Hawk 7. That the Hawk 7, well, it's a little more chonkier, so it can take a little bit more of that top end action. And I've seen it. So, I mean, I've seen him put his Indy car to the test on the circle track, and it come out on top. Especially when he's running that RTR Indy body, which has a little bit more downforce in the back. But like I said, the more that you gear those things down lower gear ratio, like in the 2s and stuff like that, yeah, you're getting that top end, but at the same aspect, those motors are taking a whole lot more RPM wear. And those brushes just can't hang with it. They're just not hard enough. They're soft, and you'll burn through a motor in 2 or 3 races. Well, you may not smoke it, but you'll burn through it to where that its peak performance is gone. I'll put it that way. And some of these guys I know right now are even using con drops out there. So that's another thing. The guys that are out there running con drops, they're even adding extra wear using those too. Back in the day, you could probably attest to this, Sean. Back in the day with the old sealed Parma motors, dropping those voodoo drops on that baby, you'd be lucky to get a race done in those. And if you made it a race, it wasn't making 2. But that's what was needed when you was running trials back in the late 90s, early 2000. It was calm dropping. Guys were zapping magnets. It was a whole different ball of tricks. Like the guys don't know how difficult it was back then. Guys were taking it so serious at that point. They were literally every 4 lanes, like if they were on the high portion of the lane, they were swapping out full gear ratios in the back and changing it a tooth or so, just so they could get more top end on the top. And then they would lower those gear ratios back within the 3 minutes. And I know over at Slot City we only had 2 minutes, but you were able to do it. And you could swap that out on the lower 4 lanes real quick and get that higher torque going on and change the wind where it finally winds out at. They don't do that no more. Like these guys are just sticking with their straight gear ratio all the way through it. But if you wanted to try to do that, set you a timer out, get good at it, and a tooth difference is a big deal, especially from the bottom 4 to the top 4. Thank you for that like. And it will give you a pretty good advantage for sure. But like when you come into tech, just make sure that you tech your other gears with you. That way I know what gears you're going to swap to. But we got a whole smorgasbord here. You're not going to get outside of the lanes of what we got here. Just recently I had a guy like last week say that he had a crown gear that I didn't think they even sold. But I actually looked it up and I found it, so I ordered it. So now we have it, and we can go all the way from a 24 crown gear here in Lanes Raceway up to I think a 30. Now anything beyond that, you're just going to wind it out too much anyway, and it's just not gonna work for you for these type of motors. You might be able to get it to do a little bit better with like a 16D, but that ain't what this class runs. It runs the FK stomp motor style, so. Like I said, they're very, very comparable to about the speed of what those old Parmas used to be. But yeah, there are all kinds of little things you can do to try to get an edge on the guys, and the more that you do, doesn't always tend to work out in your favor. But if you're doing stuff like that, quick gear changes, quick rear end changes, you're going to be ahead of the game for sure, especially on the oval. Now the orange track doesn't matter so much. Kind of just want to stick with the gear ratio because they all kind of equal out in the end. I would say if you want to see how fast you can run, black lane is probably the fastest on the orange track because you can carry so much more speed around the donut on the black lane. And then the rest of the lanes, it's really, really tight, especially on the exit towards the back stretch of the orange track. So if you're wanting to see your mantle put to the test on the orange track, just get really good on the black lane, and you can turn quite a few laps on that. Back to this oval racing, though, we see several of these guys. Printed rules, we do have them printed up here. They're kind of somewhat outdated to what the series is going to be. The series just recently went up on our website, and I think it might have got posted on Facebook. I know my brother said he was going to do that. But just for the regular GRC races, like the duel and stuff like that, it will be what is on the website that you can look up, and it'll just be under the GRC section. Hey, thanks for that, Paul Woosley. Appreciate it. Come in here. I thought he had something for me. He reached in his pocket and he gave me one of his fingers of his 5. He gave the number 1. He says. So we appreciate Paul Woosley for sure. Yeah, GRC. That's it, Sean. GRC. I mean, the rules are very, very similar to the way that we used to run them back in the day for FCR. The only difference is the motor, really. Yeah. Crazy is definitely a rabbit hole for sure. The more crazier you get, you end up like me. You end up start tapping bushings and everything else. Anything that you can try to get an advantage without going against the rules, just cheating within the rule set. That's the Kirtley way for sure. So stay within the rules and do what you can. Like I said, on the bodies, I know just offhand, there is no mailing the bodies, changing the bodies figure, or anything like that. But we do have several bodies here. I think the weights are dictative of that. If you want just a little bit of a heads up and an advantage, The JK bodies is where it's at. They're a little bit lighter, but they still hold the same thickness, and they're a little bit shorter compared to the Mid America bodies, and they're even a little bit shorter than the Parma bodies. Second to that would be the pre-cut Parma bodies. The Parma bodies are definitely the most durable, but the pre-cut Grand Prix is the best of the Parma bodies, as it's just a hair bit shorter, and it's got a smoother front profile, and I almost think that'll help with drag conditions for the most part. Yeah, anytime, Sean. If you got any questions whatsoever about any of our other classes, let me know too. As I'm here to try to help the best that I can. We just recently got in some new front wheels for the GRCs, as the guys were wanting, because these tires are not touching the ground. They're just literally in there to help you stay in when you go around corners. But when it all boils down to it, they're not actually touching the ground. So these guys were wanting little thin tires to save weight, and cut down a little bit more so that they don't touch as much. You don't have to put guide flag washers and stuff in them as much, and they still look sweet. So I mean, they're all going to be about the same price, because you're really just paying for the aluminum hub that's in them, and just a hair bit of aluminum. But at the end of this race, we see Randy Kirtley there edging it out with 491, Bruce Bullington with 460, Gerald Suttle there with 459, Tom Payton with 439, Clay Dane with 413, Robert Bishop with 375, Greg Kimball with 368, and Glenn Burden with 272. So I'm going to take a small moment here, quick break. I'll be back. I'm going to try to run some math here and see if it changes anything up drastically. If it doesn't, well, then we might have the way we're going to do our series points. But if it does, then we'll see, and I'll let you guys know the difference. All right, everybody. I just did the math, and I'm very impressed with it. As we can see, Randy Kirtley, Bruce Bullington, Gerald Suttle, Tom Payton, Clay Dame, Robert Bishop, Greg Kimball, and Glenn Burden were in this race. We're fixing to do a drawing for them. We'll let you guys know whether it's on the internet or if it's right now. Well, it looks like my wife's doing it right now. So, yeah, go ahead and pull it.
There's 8 racers.
All right, you got them all? All right, let's see. Looks like Clay Dame's going to take it home. So Clay Dame is going to win our drawing tonight for this free race for the guys, and he's going to get him a motor cooler for free. But just in perspective, after we did the math, I want to tell you guys about how close it is and how it reels it in. Because you would look here and you see Randy Kirtley averaging 61.4, and the next guy closest to him would be Bruce Bullington with 57.5. But their laps, their total laps is the thing here. So we see Randy Kirtley out here with 491 and Bruce Bullington with 460, a difference of like 29 laps or so. After we did the math on and we handicapped both of these guys, Randy Kirtley would have finished with 544 laps and Bruce Bullington would have finished with 541. So a difference of 3 laps. So you can see where the differences from race to race could, in this series, if we continue to go on this way. But you guys let me know online if you think you would rather see the handicap version of this or you would rather see it the way that it is right now. But you would see pretty much Bruce Bullington, Gerald Suttle, Tom Payton, and probably Clay would be within a lap of each other if we did this average this way. But yeah, by all means, if you guys would comment under this race or whatever thing that we post on Facebook and let us know what you think. Thank you for the love there. But I appreciate everybody stopping in here. We're fixing to get the orange track on, and these guys are going to run some GTP. I might come back with a GTP race here. I'm going to stop the stream right now, and might see you guys soon. If not, I'm going to help these guys track marshal. So thank you guys for watching. It's Donovan Kirtley. I'll see you next time. And God bless you.